Welcome back to Hytale Lore, you guys. Today we're talking about the Crucible, which, if you did not know, Crucible is the name used in-game for Zone 4's ancient civilization. The devastated lands are this fiery landscape that used to house a civilization of ancient humans in the world of Orbis and no longer, houses the skeletons of them, we should say. So we've gone through a few of these in this world now. I kind of like looking at all this together. It's just like kind of satisfying for me. We've talked about the gods, which is honestly worth like a little pit stop before we get into this, because I honestly think it's particularly relevant to some of the stuff that we're talking about today. So let's jump in here real quick. These are all of the statues that are in the game, and presumably at least most of them correspond to different gods, different deities that are in the game or worshipped by different factions. So we have all these statues of her at first, right? These are very clearly Gaia statues. We've got the Zone 4 one, which is her decapitated. We'll get into it. We'll get into it a little more. And then we have all these other statues. We got the spooky Outlander statues that seem to have something to do with Varen. And then we've even got some ancient Zone 2 human statues and an ancient Scarrick statue. So they've all got these different deities that they worship. Remember this. Remember this, because we will return to it. So over here, this is what we were up to last week with the Outlanders. We checked out all of their structures, the mobs that are in the game, and the story that we can piece together through that. And here is Zone 4's. So we're going to take a little pit stop right here on the top of this tower and say hi to some of the things that call Zone 4 home. These are the people who live in Zone 4. We get a bunch of interesting stuff here. First of all, the fact that there are two different groups of these people. We get the burnt skeletons right here. So we've got these soldiers. The other interesting thing is some of them do use like Latin words. Like this is a praetorium, which is a Latin word for soldier, for a guard. It really reinforces all of the, ancient Greek mythology influence that is in this game. I know some people have talked about it, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. That deserves a video all on its own at some point. But Praetorium, big giant skeleton guy. The thing with him is he reminds me a little bit of this guy. Which is very interesting because there does seem to be a relationship in the game's lore between the ancient humans of Zone 4 and the Outlanders. Which we'll get into a little bit in this video, but if you want more, go check out the Outlanders video. It's already out on the YouTube channel. Whether you're watching this on Twitch, whether you're watching this on YouTube, it is there. It exists. It's real. But they look very similar. It's just that he's giant. He's not a normal-sized human. We'll get into it. We'll get into it. So they've got all of these. They also have this guy with the musket. And I believe he also is the one who has... Let's see if we can... How did you do that? How did I set you free? What is the name of this? Bleached? Hound Bleached. Very strange name for a hound. Bleached? Bleached? But they do seem to hunt together. And as far as I know, these are the only, like, wolves that you can find in Zone 4. So presumably there used to be wolves. Kind of like you get other hunting wolves for, like the Chorks have hunting wolves or the Outlanders have hunting wolves, things like that. And then I guess this was their hunting wolf. But he does have a musket. This is the only gun currently in exploration mode. We do obviously have the explosives that are from the goblins. Let's see, I think they're called a lobber. Goblin lobber. These guys have got their little, look at his tongue. They've got their little guns. The interesting thing about the goblins is that they don't really seem to know how things work. Let me tell you what I mean. I promise this is going somewhere. Let me cook. We look at the pickaxes, we get these tooltips. These are things that you can find on different items all throughout the entire game. On the tooltips for the pickaxes, all the pickaxes, it says, all that stands between the goblin dukes and total domination of the underground regions is that they have yet to understand what this tool is. They don't understand how to use a pickaxe. They don't understand how to do anything. The only things that the goblins possess are things that they have stolen from other civilizations. Now, I think it's no-brainer that the goblins took their gunpowder, their explosives, from Zone 4, from the people of Crucible. Why am I calling it Crucible? We'll get into it in a second. But let's put a pin in that because it will be important later on. So we have these guys. These are the burnt skeletons. And then we have these that are the incandescent skeletons. This is the very interesting thing, particularly about these guys, is that they're very much imbued by fire. Like the little spikes on their heads. Look at the little fiery light on top of its head. We have a few items laid out here. Very similar to the Outlander lore, I've gathered some tool tips here to help us kind of walk through a little bit of a story. So, first of all, we have the Alchemist's Workbench. This is something that you can find all over in Zone 3 in the Outlander settlements as well, but is also very common in Zone 4 in their buildings, which I've got here that we can explore in a moment as well. So, it reads, "The alchemists of old long sought the secrets to eternal life. Some might say they achieved that grand goal, though perhaps not in the form they imagined." And it does make me wonder, I know I'm not the first person to bring this up, but I think it's a reasonable thought that maybe part of their undead situation, both in zombie form and in skeleton form, is somewhat of a choice. Maybe not that they intended to turn out like this, but they were pursuing eternal life and now they have it. It's just that this is the form that they have it in. The Outlanders are known to do these necromantic rituals in which they use this void-imbued water to use in their alchemy, and they have these alchemist workbenches standing at the ready next to these void water pools that they have. And it seems like that is something that they took from their friends in Zone 4, as we can find full alchemist workstations, not just the workbench, but like full rooms that have plants and stuff that would be used in potions and that you can in-game use in potions. We also have the Arcanist workbench. Again, have not found this in their structures. I just think that the blurb is relevant. It says, "The arcane arts are the closest mere mortals have ever come to achieving avatar powers. Had they mastered them sooner, perhaps they would not have been so easily swayed." And I do wonder if this is a little bit of a hint at the hubris of these humans, which we can see referenced a little later on as well, right here in the bone fragments. Orbis's most advanced civilizations shared a common trait, the hubris that ultimately led to their downfall. These bone fragments and the cursed creatures from which they were salvaged should serve as a reminder that some paths are better left untrodden. So walk with me here. Basically, we have an ancient civilization in Zone 4 back before it was devastated. Presumably, they still live on these islands alongside volcanoes, but at this point in time, they are not undead. Their landscapes haven't been devastated and turned into ash and fiery logs, and maybe at this point they're still humans as well. They begin to grasp a little bit too high, and that eventually leads to their downfall and a sort of schism. So, right here on Essence of Fire, it says, "This energy once gave form to the dreams of Crucible's artisans." And Crucible here referencing the civilization that Zone 4 used to be. Today, it merely lingers in the creatures that dwell amid the desolated volcanic regions. So eventually, they were using this power, this essence of fire. So if you're not familiar, there are these essences that correspond to different elements that all seem to roughly tie back to Gaia. I mean, she seems to be master of the elements, and all of these essences that connect to an element also connect to her, and it seems as though the people of Crucible, of Zone 4, were utilizing this essence. It does seem to speak to the hubris, right? If they're trying to utilize this, maybe weaponize this in their, boom, in their explosives, in their weaponry. Cindercloth scraps. So this is something that in Zone 4 is used to make armor. So like, for example, if you're trying to pursue a set of full adamantite armor, you're going to need Cindercloth scraps in order to help tie it all together. When the cursed flame scoured Crucible, it left nothing unchanged. Even these scraps of fabric salvaged from the charred bones of a former denizen continue to emit an uncanny heat. Now, denizen, if you don't know, just means citizen, basically. So it's referencing cursed flame scouring this landscape, leaving nothing unchanged. And this, I think, speaks perfectly to whatever's going on with these guys over here. They got struck by fire. They were not left unchanged. Back in here, we see this other piece. It reads, when the Outlanders rejected the flame and split from their brethren, they turned instead toward the colder regions and the fragile strength found in the advancing sheets of ice. So, like I said, we talked about this a little bit last week, but it paints, I think, a pretty clear picture, right? So, ancient Zone 4 humans created the society called Crucible. They began utilizing this essence of fire. They began developing those, gunpowder, basically, explosives. And eventually, the fire that they were trying to wield turned on them. Why exactly is up for debate. I've seen some people posit that maybe it's because Zone 4 was trying to, take that part of Gaia's power, and that it was Gaia's punishment for them. The way that they turned out, what happened to them, the explosions that absolutely devastated their entire society was some sort of godly, divine punishment in retribution for trying to take and use elements of the natural world in ways that were perhaps unnatural. I've also seen it suggested that Zone 4's ancient humans basically put themselves on a higher pedestal than Gaia, and that was the hubris that led to their downfall. I think both are easily imaginable. But the really interesting thing here is that it seems like the Outlanders, which in Hytale's previous blog posts were described as a breakaway human faction, quite literally broke away from Crucible, the society in Zone 4. They rejected the flame, split from their brethren. It would make perfect sense if, your whole society has collapsed into fire and flame, that in rejecting that and trying to escape it, you would go to some place that is the opposite of fire, ice, right? Where you're not going to get burnt, you're not going to get buried under lava and ash, you're not going to have volcanoes to contend with. So, in addition to these Cindercloth scraps, we do also have the Bolt of Cindercloth, and we have Cinder Sinew, which is just quite simply a very uncomfortable name. And over here, we have all of these different wood sets, basically different outcomes from the devastation, right? We've got the fire logs, so very much like the skeletons and the Ember Wolf over there, quite imbued with fire, right? Wood should not be able to exist constantly on fire like this, and yet they do. Similar to the skeletons, similar to the Ember Wolf. And then we have the burnt logs. We have petrified log, which in our world happens basically when wood gets surrounded by vast mineral deposits that basically take the place of the wood, which can absolutely happen after a volcanic eruption. And we have poisoned log. So if you did not know, there are stretches of forest in Zone 4 that seem to have been infected by the void. And this is an example of that. These poisoned logs form these twisted, gnarled trees inside of forests in Zone 4. And we, of course, have the ash and so on. And then we have all of their fiery garb. So these are Cindercloth clothes, full sets of Cindercloth clothes. And then we have their weapons, which again really do seem to suggest that these were created before their devastation. I mean, they've got these runes in them. They look inscribed intentionally. Completely unrelated note, but I would love a runic magic system in this game, where you can place runes on armor or weapons to imbue them with magic. That would be sick. That would be sick. And then we have these flame staffs. We also have a Trork staff that has a red crystal atop it. The red crystals do seem to carry that fire magic. And then, of course, we have the flame spell book that these guys right here possess. He's a runner, he's a track star. And then lastly, we have the statues that I do want to bring out here, just so we can see these side by side. This is the Gaia statue that we find in Zone 1, and then this is the one that we find in Zone 4. Now, I believe, this is out of basalt, so it was made out of volcanic material, because it's very clearly made out of the same stone as this. They carved a statue of Gaia out of volcanic material, which meant that they were living alongside the volcanoes while they still worshipped her at some point in time. The question is, did they break away from her as the explosions happened or before the explosions happened? It's very interesting because there's some parts of these buildings. Let's actually go visit one right now. We're going to go check out the Forgotten Temple entrance that Zone 4 has. So these are the different entrances that you can find throughout the world. This is 3, 2, 1, and then this one is 4. And you can see all of that, I need to slow down my speed. You can see all of that corruptive magic that's layered outside of it. You can see the fire crystal that is now outside of it as well. No coincidence, I'm sure. And then you can see her broken statue. The really interesting thing to me here that caught my attention is that when you go down inside of this Forgotten Temple entrance in Zone 4, you get these ruined portions that are higher up, and then down below is not ruined anymore because it's underground. So this part would have escaped the devastation that the upper levels got hit with, you know? Volcanic eruption hit everything up there. But this, like, there's not a crack in the walls. Everything is smooth. Everything is beautiful. And yet her statues here are still broken. Now, it's possible this is like a placeholder, and maybe they'll flesh this out a little bit later, and these statues down here will be unharmed. But this really makes it look like her decapitation was very intentional. Let's go take a little walk through some Zone 4 structures. I hope you have at least some working understanding of some of Zone 3 structures, because we are going to have some moments where we call back to those a little bit. These are buildings left over from Crucible, the civilization of Zone 4. Now, they are definitely more put together than the ruins left over in Zone 2, which is very interesting to me. This is what we get in terms of ruins in Zone 2. They're much more run down. We don't get those, you know, the beautiful windows and the trimmed roofs and all of that sort of stuff over there. Not really a thing, but we do get it here in Crucible, which in my opinion speaks to the fact that they were a more put together and advanced civilization overall. But we can see the Gaia banners still lying out here. But let's continue flying through here, because these structures, in my opinion, get more and more interesting as we go along. So as we hit this one, we begin to get these little planters here, in which they have items that are used in the game for, for alchemy. We can see up here, we get it's almost like a little garden area, like a greenhouse kind of. They have all these windows alongside them, presumably to let these plants grow, and the plants have continued to grow in their absence. Or maybe the skeletons are helping them grow, even in afterlife? And then we have these little patches of water every once in a while here, and look at this. You see this little purplish crystal? This is the exact same color of crystal that we get in the water pools in Zone 3. We can see these right in here as well. You can see that they accompany the corruption. So these are corrupted blocks. These are basically a sign of Varen and the Void's influence in the world, right? And alongside them come these purple crystals. Same thing happening in the water right here. This, I think, is a really, really great tie-in for the two cultures, because the Outlanders purposefully worship Varen around circles of water that are imbued with magic from these crystals. And it seems like that is something that may have begun here in Zone 4. I'm looking for the lab right now, because I know this was something that somebody actually showed me. I can't for the life of me remember who. But yeah, this was something that somebody showed me. Ooh, here's one. Here's one. Here we go. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here, all right? We get more and more connections in this underground lab to the Outlanders of Zone 3 and the ancient connection between these two factions. This right here is a lovely little alchemist, okay? This alchemist is studying at an alchemist's workbench, naturally, which are also used by the Outlanders in Zone 3 alongside their void water. We get a little cauldron here, which we're also going to come back to later on. But we have these dark temple coffins. These are things that we see specifically all throughout Zone 3. You can see even the mark of Varen atop of them. Not only that, but we also get the green flame that is specifically attributed to the Outlanders down here. This is stuff they have all over their settlements. This is something that also is attributed to Varen, right? Green color signifies Varen in this game. Ha! Here we go. Here we have more of these alchemists and a proper put-together lab. We have all of these plants along the side that they have grown for their potions. And we have the alchemist's workbench right here that they would be using. It's also interesting. There's like specific potions that you actually find inside of the game here. Specifically in Zone 4. So they have a bunch of potions of poison, like right here, and the potions that they carry are clearly poison potions. They also have potions of purification that you can find down below in their sewers. Maybe those are used as like antidotes to the poison. And then we also get a lot of potions of stamina. And that seems to be what they have the most of. Which also makes sense considering that it seems to suggest all of these little bits of lore together. That the ancient humans were pursuing long life. So making things like potions of stamina, potions of health really does fit in line with that. And these are all of their ancient buildings and stuff. Now, this is where I want to point something else out, which is the fact that their homes are just made of stone. These are not the same, right? We get these homes that are made out of these, it's regular old cobblestone, like you can find in any zone at all. And then we have these big buildings that are built out of volcanic material. We get volcanic brick here. We have basalt, I believe. We do. We have basalt bricks here. These are things that are made from volcanoes, right? Why are the big buildings like this and the little ones not? I don't know. Maybe it's a placeholder. I also laid out over here one of their towns. So we can actually see all of this kind of fitted together. Like the houses, the town is made entirely out of cobblestone, which really, really seems to suggest to me that like maybe some of this was built before there was this much like volcanic action around. I mean, basalt is like cooled volcanic rock. So it would have to come after eruptions. But we do see Gaia's decapitated head multiple times here inside of their towns. And then there's also, of course, the sewer entrances that we have here as well. I believe I put one over here. I did indeed. So you can actually see what it looks like going down into one of these sewers. If you haven't explored these yet, these are beneath those Zone 4 cities. They look like this. You find these grates in them, and you travel underground, and eventually you hit these sewer systems. And they're always lit by different colored crystals. So in this case, we get these fire crystals. Some, however, are also lit by, I believe I have one over here. There we go. Lit by these void crystals instead. Very, very Outlander-esque, because if you go underground into Outlander dungeons, you find these crystals illuminating stretches of water, very similar to what we get in the sewers down there. We get a layout of a town here. We can see their fields of wheat that are now burnt. All of these little dots right here, these cubes, are places where structures would generate, so these would all be houses and so on. And then we get to a very interesting set of structures here. These are called witch huts in the files. These are the witch huts. What's most interesting to me here is the fact that, yes, they do spawn in Zone 4. I believe in the corrupted forests. I would have to double check that. But they have these cauldrons. And what I take from this is that these are almost like little miniature versions of the alchemy stations that you get inside of those cities that we just visited over there. Inside of those structures, we have the alchemist laboratories. And in here, we get these witch huts that have these cauldrons, maybe for a similar purpose. It's just interesting they're both happening in the same region of the world. We don't have any witches in the game, obviously. There's nothing that currently lives inside of these huts. Nothing is in them. I did have somebody tell me that they saw what looked like a bunch of these all spawning together, like a whole village on stilts, and that it looked very Quebec-y. Which is very interesting because we do get these giant towers in the game, and you see they have these cages dangling off of them, like this one here. These are called gibbets. This is a type of medieval torture. This was a real thing that they actually did to people. They would put prisoners inside of cages and hang them off the sides of towers. And sometimes it would be a temporary punishment. Sometimes the people would die in there. And that is what they have on these structures here. But they have... Here it is. There's a Quebec in this one. These do spawn in the world. This is something that you can actually legitimately find, are these imprisoned Quebecs. I've not seen any sign of a Quebec anywhere in Zone 4. But what we have seen in the corrupted forest in Zone 4 is this guy. These don't naturally spawn in the world at this point in time. But we did see them in the gameplay footage that was dropped before the game released, inside of the corrupted forest in Zone 3 in Zone 4 bordering Zone 3. And they look like a really cursed, messed up Quebec, considering the fact that those entire forests are corrupted by Varen's power. If the Quebecs used to live in them, it would make sense that this is kind of what they became over time. But they have like the Quebec ears, they have the same shape of the head, and then of course they have all of like the wood bits on them, exaggerated fronds atop their head instead of the normal leaves. And it looks like even the way that they walk has been replaced by these instead of their normal little Quebec legs, which do seem to look very similar to the Quebec model. It's just really the hands and the torso that have changed in proportions. And I don't know if that's like an intentional thing. Maybe these guys were imprisoned with this as the result. Or maybe these are two completely unrelated elements. We can also see, and I'm actually going to bring up something that was posted on Twitter here. Full credit to the poster, who I believe I still have in the screenshot here. This is a structure that's in the volcanoes, and it does seem to be almost like an arena sort of situation that's within a caldera. And there is a structure opposite this entry pathway right here that really looks like it's a human. It looks like it's a big, like, house-like thing set up in the shape of a human, and this person is positing maybe this is where the fire dragons will eventually spawn, which I think would be epic. But is also worth bringing up for the sole point that it does seem like at some point in their history, Zone 4 began to prioritize themselves above Gaia and above the natural world. They began to use elements of the natural world in their alchemy, in their gunpowder. They began to just chase power, and in some way or another, eventually that led to their own devastation and destruction as the volcanoes erupted, and that fiery power, somehow magical in its own right, imbued parts of the land, like those fiery trees that you can just glimpse over there, and these creatures over here. Both the undead humans and the wolves both seem to be imbued with this fire. The power that was left from these people, their gunpowder, their explosives, were then taken up by the goblins, who seem to be the sole possessors of it in the world now. Thank goodness it's just in their hands, since they don't seem to be able to create anything on their own and can only use what was left to them by other old civilizations. And then lastly, something we haven't significantly touched upon, presence of these, the wraiths, that look a hell of a lot like a Grim Reaper, and I can only imagine show up in Zone 4 because they were drawn to the mass casualties and the amount of bodies that they would have had to have reaped in those places. The other interesting thing here is that their blue flame, they look exactly like the fire that you find in the light temples. This is fire around worship to Gaia. The wraiths here don't look necessarily like something of Varen. They've got the blue eyes of the undead, which seem to signify to me their responsibility for looking over the undead, especially given the whole Grim Reaper visage that they have. But they have this blue fire that seems to be attributed to Gaia, which does seem to suggest to me that no, Gaia was not responsible for the eruptions that happened. I don't think that Gaia punished them with a big fiery explosion. I like the theory. I don't think it's true. I think they ended up punishing themselves. I think they took too much from the world. I think they took too much fire, and that they brought this entirely upon themselves, and then Gaia sent these guys in to clean up the mess afterwards and reap the souls, as it were. And then you can see all of these callbacks in these people's alchemy, even in this giant praetorium that looks like the Outlander brute, that the Outlanders, the only humans that we really get in the game right now, are breakaway people from this civilization of Crucible. The fact that even the Scarix that we will be looking at very soon had a divine statue of their own. This is their ancient builder statue on the left right here. The humans of Zone 1 had a godly statue of their own, this giant snake that they seemed to worship. Even the Outlanders have their deities now as well. And then, of course, the Quebecs still seem to have Gaia in Zone 1. The people of Crucible don't have anything except for the ruined Gaia statues, which seems to run exactly in parallel with their belief that they didn't need a god, or that they were above all of that they were above Gaia, above the natural world, which also seems perfectly in line with their own downfall. We stream these every 11 a.m. Tuesday PST on Twitch, which is linked on the YouTube channel if that's where you're watching it. If you would like to, there is a poll that currently goes live at the same time these videos drop on YouTube if you want to vote on what we cover for the next week. If you enjoy talking about this lore, we do have a Discord server as well. If you want to hop in there, you are free to join and hang out. But in the meantime, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.